You cheated on me. I got my revenge.
The morning I discovered Rebecca's betrayal started like any other Tuesday. Coffee brewing, news droning from the kitchen TV, the familiar sounds of our 15-year marriage playing on autopilot. I was adjusting my tie when I noticed her phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. The same phone she'd been guarding like a state secret for months. She was in the shower, humming some tune I didn't recognize. The melody felt foreign, like everything else about her lately. Without really thinking, I glanced at the screen. The preview message made my blood freeze. Can't wait for tonight. Room 237 at the Marriott. Delete this. The sender, Marcus Chen, her business partner. My hands went numb. I sat heavily on our bed, the bed where we'd planned our future, where we'd conceived our daughter Sarah, where Rebecca had whispered promises that now felt like elaborate lies. Marcus. The charming entrepreneur she'd been working with on her consulting project for the past 6 months. The same Marcus who'd attended our anniversary dinner just last month, shaking my hand while looking me straight in the eye. The same Marcus who'd complimented my choice in wine while apparently planning to destroy my marriage. Rebecca's voice carried from the bathroom. David? Can you grab my black heels from downstairs? I cleared my throat, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. Sure, hon. But I didn't move. I stared at that phone, my 15 years of trust crumbling like old paper. Part of me wanted to storm into that bathroom and demand explanations. Another part wanted to pretend I'd never seen it, to live in blissful ignorance just a little longer. Instead, I did something that would define the next 3 months of my life. I took a photo of her screen with my own phone. Then I went downstairs, grabbed her heels, and handed them to her with a kiss on the cheek when she emerged, hair still damp, skin flushed from the hot water. Thanks, babe, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I'll be late tonight. Big client presentation? No problem, I replied, watching her slip into those black heels, the ones I'd bought her for Christmas. I'll pick up Sarah from soccer practice. She paused at the mirror, applying lipstick with surgical precision. You're the best. The irony tasted like bile. I called in sick to work. For the first time in my career as a systems architect, I couldn't focus on networks and servers. All I could think about was the network of lies Rebecca had been building, the servers of deception running in the background of our marriage. After dropping Sarah at school, our bright 13-year-old daughter who still believed her parents were happy, I drove to my brother Jake's apartment. Jake answered the door in gym clothes, protein shake in hand. Dave, what's wrong? You look like hell. I showed him the photo. He read it twice, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. Jesus Christ. Are you sure this is what it looks like? Pretty sure adultery looks exactly like this. Jake let me in, clearing takeout containers from his couch. As a divorce attorney, he'd seen this story 1,000 times, but never with his own brother as the victim. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to destroy her, I said, surprised by the venom in my own voice. But first, I want to know everything. Jake nodded slowly. We'll need evidence, real evidence, photos, documentation, financial records. If you're going to war, we do it right. I don't want just a divorce, Jake. I want to obliterate the life she's been building on lies. Careful, Dave. Revenge has a way of consuming people. But I was already consumed. The moment I saw that text, something inside me died, and something else was born. Something cold and calculating and patient. For the next week, I became a ghost in my own life. I installed tracking software on our shared computer. I set up a hidden camera in our bedroom. I even hired a private investigator, a former cop named Patricia who specialized in adultery cases. Most affairs follow predictable patterns, Patricia explained during our first meeting. Hotels, restaurants, routine meetups. Your wife thinks she's being careful, but careful people make the biggest mistakes because they get comfortable. She was right. Within 3 days, I had enough evidence to end Rebecca's career, her relationship with Marcus, and any claim she might have to our shared assets. The photos were devastating. Rebecca and Marcus at the Marriott, checking in separately but leaving together. Rebecca and Marcus at an expensive restaurant across town, her hand covering his across the table. Rebecca and Marcus in his BMW, her head thrown back in laughter at something he'd said. But the worst was a video Patricia captured through the hotel room window. Rebecca, animated and joyful in a way I hadn't seen in years, dancing to music I couldn't hear while Marcus watched from the bed. She looked genuinely happy, happier than I'd seen her with me in a long time. That's when I realized this wasn't just about sex. She was in love with him. I spent sleepless nights planning my approach. The old David would have confronted her directly, demanded explanations, begged for our marriage. But the old David was naive enough to believe his wife when she said she was working late every Tuesday and Thursday. The new David was surgical. First, I documented everything. Financial records showing unexplained charges at restaurants and hotels. Credit card bills with purchases I couldn't account for. Her changed behavior, her new clothes, her sudden interest in yoga and wine tastings. All the classic signs I'd been too trusting to notice. Then I started my research on Marcus Chen. Marcus wasn't just Rebecca's business partner. He was a serial entrepreneur with a trail of failed ventures and abandoned partnerships. Worse, he was married. His wife, Linda Chen, was a successful pediatrician who apparently had no idea her husband was conducting business meetings at hourly rate motels. That's when I found my opening. "I'd like to schedule a consultation," I told Dr. Linda Chen's receptionist. 2 days later, I sat in her sterile office discussing my concern about my daughter Sarah's development. Dr. Chen was professional, thorough, and completely unaware that I knew her husband intimately through surveillance photos. "Sarah seems to be doing well physically," she concluded after reviewing the fake concerns I'd raised. "Is there something specific worrying you at home?" I leaned forward, my voice dropping with manufactured concern. "Actually, Dr. Chen, I think you and I need to discuss something more serious. It's about our spouses." Her professional smile faltered. I pulled out my phone, showing her the first photo. Marcus and Rebecca entering the Marriott together. "I believe you know my wife, Rebecca," I said quietly. "She's been conducting business with your husband." The color drained from her face as I swiped through the evidence. Weeks of documentation, timestamps, locations. Her hands shook as she realized the scope of the betrayal. "How long?" she whispered. "At least 6 months, that I can prove. Probably longer." Dr. Chen stared at the photos, her entire world reorganizing itself around this new reality. "What do you want?" "Justice," I said simply. "And I think you might want the same thing." Linda Chen was a formidable ally. As a doctor, she understood evidence and documentation. As a betrayed wife, she understood fury. Together, we planned something that would dismantle both Marcus and Rebecca's lives with surgical precision. "Marcus thinks he's clever," Linda said during one of our planning sessions at a coffee shop across town. "He's been hiding money, moving assets around. He thinks I don't notice." "Rebecca's been doing the same thing," I replied. "New bank accounts, private credit cards. She's planning something." Linda's eyes were ice cold. "They're planning to leave us." The pieces clicked together. This wasn't just an affair, it was an exit strategy. Rebecca and Marcus were setting up their escape, planning to abandon their marriages and start fresh together. They were just waiting for the right moment to drop the bomb on their oblivious spouses. "Well," Linda said, stirring her latte with mechanical precision, "let's drop our own bomb first." The plan was elegant in its cruelty. First, Linda quietly liquidated several of Marcus's hidden accounts, transferring the money to legitimate business expenses she could justify. As his wife, she had legal access to their shared finances, access Marcus had forgotten about while focused on his secret romance. Meanwhile, I began documenting Rebecca's affair in ways that would destroy her professionally. Rebecca worked as a marketing consultant, and her client contracts all contained morality clauses. An affair with a business partner would violate her professional standards and cost her most of her accounts. But the masterstroke came from Linda's medical connections. "Marcus has been claiming business expenses for the hotel rooms," Linda explained. "Tax fraud. And since Rebecca's business partnership with him involves shared financial responsibilities, she's equally liable." We weren't just ending marriages. We were ending careers, financial security, and reputations. The trap was set for their regular Tuesday night rendezvous. Linda and I waited in the Marriott lobby, dressed casually, looking like any other guests. We'd already contacted the local news. Linda had connections everywhere, and fed them a story about investigating business fraud. At 7:15 p.m., Marcus arrived, checking in at the front desk with nervous energy. At 7:30, Rebecca appeared, moving through the lobby like she belonged there. They were so focused on each other, so intoxicated by their secret, that they never noticed Linda and me watching from the restaurant. At 8 p.m., Linda nodded to the private investigator we'd hired for the evening. Patricia had recommended him. He headed upstairs with professional equipment and legal documentation. At 8:30, the news crew arrived. At 9 o'clock, hotel security was called to investigate a disturbance. By 9:15, Marcus Chen and Rebecca Morrison were being escorted through the lobby in handcuffs, charged with fraud, tax evasion, and a dozen other financial crimes that Linda and I had spent weeks documenting. Rebecca's face, when she saw me sitting calmly in the restaurant, was a masterpiece of betrayal, shock, and rage. She opened her mouth to scream something at me, but the police officer guided her away before she could speak. Marcus looked broken. His business empire, built on creative accounting and hidden partnerships, was crumbling in real time as federal investigators seized his records. Linda watched her husband's perp walk with the same clinical detachment she brought to difficult diagnoses. "Thorough," she said approvingly. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Rebecca's business collapsed within a week. Her clients terminated their contracts after the fraud charges became public. The marketing agency she'd spent 10 years building was worthless overnight. Marcus's various enterprises went into immediate bankruptcy. The federal investigation revealed a web of shell companies, hidden assets, and tax avoidance schemes that sent him to federal prison for 7 years. Rebecca, as his business partner, was charged as a co-conspirator. Her lawyer, an overpriced shark who specialized in white-collar crime, managed to get her sentence reduced to 3 years and substantial financial penalties. But the legal consequences were nothing compared to the social destruction. Our daughter Sarah learned about her mother's affair from classmates who'd seen the news coverage. The betrayal devastated her, but what hurt more was discovering that her mother had been planning to abandon our family for a life with Marcus. "Did she ever love us?" Sarah asked me one night, crying in my arms. "I think she did," I replied, though I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. But people change. Sometimes they become people we don't recognize. Rebecca's parents, who'd always been lukewarm toward me, suddenly became my strongest supporters. Her mother visited weekly, bringing groceries and help with Sarah, apologizing over and over for her daughter's choices. "We raised her better than this," she would say, tears in her eyes. But the most satisfying revenge came from an unexpected source: Marcus's other victims. The news coverage revealed that Marcus had been running similar scams for years. Business partners he'd defrauded, investors he'd misled, employees he'd stolen from. They all came forward once his arrest made headlines. Rebecca, as his most recent partner, became the face of his criminal enterprise. Her picture appeared in business journals as an example of how trusted professionals could be corrupted by greed and ambition. The woman who'd once lectured me about my lack of ambition, who'd complained that I was too comfortable with mediocrity, was now a cautionary tale about the dangers of ambition without ethics. Linda and I maintained a professional relationship throughout the legal proceedings. We'd coordinate our testimonies, share information, support each other through the endless depositions and court appearances. But we never became friends. We were bound together by shared trauma and mutual revenge, not affection. Once justice was served, we returned to our separate lives. Linda kept her medical practice and raised her 2 young children alone. She was stronger than I'd expected, more resilient. The betrayal had wounded her, but it hadn't broken her. I focused on rebuilding my relationship with Sarah and advancing my own career. The systems architecture skills that Rebecca had dismissed as boring suddenly seemed more valuable. While she was learning prison routines, I was being promoted to senior architect at a Fortune 500 company. Rebecca was released after serving 2 years of her 3-year sentence. Good behavior, apparently. I only learned about her release because Sarah mentioned it. Rebecca had tried to contact her through social media. "What should I do, Dad?" Sarah asked. She was 15 now, more mature than she should have been, shaped by her mother's abandonment into someone cautious about trusting others. "That's your choice," I said carefully. "She's still your mother." "But you don't owe her anything." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "I think I want to see her, once, to tell her how angry I am." The meeting took place at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown where Rebecca couldn't corner us or create a scene. I sat at a nearby table, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to give them privacy. Rebecca looked older, harder. Prison had aged her in ways that simple time couldn't account for. Her hair was gray at the roots, her clothes cheap and ill-fitting. The confident woman who'd walked into that hotel 2 years ago was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned what it meant to lose everything. She tried to hug Sarah, who stepped back immediately. "You look so grown up," Rebecca said, tears in her eyes. "I had to grow up," Sarah replied coldly. "You weren't here." Rebecca winced. Sarah, I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Sarah interrupted. I'm disappointed. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed to have your name. The words hit Rebecca like physical blows. She sat down heavily, looking suddenly fragile. I never meant for any of this to happen, Rebecca said quietly. Yes, you did, Sarah replied with devastating clarity. You chose this. You chose Marcus over Dad. You chose money over family. You chose to be a criminal instead of a mother. Rebecca started crying then, ugly, desperate sobs that drew stares from other customers. Sarah watched without sympathy. I want you to know something, Sarah continued. Dad never said a bad word about you. Even after everything came out, even when I was crying and asking why you left us, he never called you names or tried to turn me against you. He protected you, even when you didn't deserve it. I felt a surge of pride in my daughter mixed with renewed anger at Rebecca for forcing a child to be this strong. But I'm not Dad, Sarah said, standing up. I don't forgive you. I don't think I ever will. Don't contact me again. She walked away, leaving Rebecca sobbing at the table. I followed Sarah out, but not before catching Rebecca's eye. She looked at me with something that might have been regret, or maybe just exhaustion. I felt nothing for her. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity. She was just a stranger who'd once shared my name. 5 years later, I received a wedding invitation that made me laugh out loud. Linda Chen was marrying a fellow doctor, a radiologist she'd met during her recovery from the Marcus situation. The invitation was elegant, understated, classy. Everything Marcus hadn't been. I sent an expensive gift and a note congratulating her on finding happiness. She sent back a thank you card with a personal message. Thank you for teaching me that revenge is a dish best served with legal documentation and federal prosecutors. Rebecca tried to rebuild her life, but the internet is forever. Every job application, every potential relationship, every apartment rental, they all led back to news articles about her criminal conviction and public humiliation. She eventually moved to another state, took her maiden name back, and found work as a part-time bookkeeper for a small nonprofit. It was honest work, if humble. Perhaps she'd learned something from her destruction. Marcus served his full 7 years and was deported back to Taiwan, where his family disowned him. His business empire was gone, his reputation ruined, his marriage dissolved. The man who'd thought he was clever enough to steal another man's wife had lost everything to that man's patience and planning. Sarah graduated high school with honors and chose to study business ethics in college, inspired, she said, by wanting to prevent what happened to our family from happening to others. I want to catch people like Marcus and Mom before they hurt families, she explained. I was proud of her and grateful that my revenge had taken the form of justice rather than pure destruction. Sarah had learned that actions have consequences, that trust is precious, and that sometimes good people have to fight back against bad ones. On quiet evenings, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd confronted Rebecca directly that first morning. Would she have ended the affair? Would we have tried counseling, fought to save our marriage? But then I remember the joy on her face in that hotel room video, the careful planning of their financial schemes, the coldness with which she'd prepared to abandon her family. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a cry for help. This was a calculated betrayal by someone who'd decided that her own desires mattered more than the people who loved her. My revenge wasn't just about punishing Rebecca and Marcus. It was about teaching my daughter that some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. It was about showing her that integrity matters, that actions have consequences, and that sometimes love means protecting yourself and the people you care about from those who would exploit that love. Rebecca chose to betray us. I chose to stop her. And in the end, I think I chose better. The coffee grows cold as I finish writing this account, 5 years later. Tomorrow, Sarah graduates from college. Next month, I'm taking a promotion that will move us to Seattle, where we can start fresh without the shadows of Rebecca's choices following us. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something better on the ashes of what was torn down. Rebecca and Marcus destroyed my marriage, but they accidentally gave me the chance to become a better father, a stronger man, and someone who understands the difference between justice and vengeance. I never saw Rebecca again after that coffee shop encounter. I hear she's still struggling, still trying to rebuild from the ruins of her own choices. Part of me, a very small part, hopes she finds peace eventually. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. That perhaps is the cruelest revenge of all.